Our rescue dog. My usually quiet son watched the workmen yelling and throwing rocks at the pitiful brown bearded collie pacing in slow circles in the parking lot. He angrily told them to leave the dog alone. He would take him home. As the men laughed, the dog settled into my son's car, and the scruffiest, saddest looking dog we'd ever seen entered our lives. He was so weak that when I first saw him and lifted his head to look at the poor creature, he shut his eyes rather than making an eye contact. My husband said he'd never seen a dog in such horrible condition. We visited our vet, who thought the dog had been on his own for quite some time. We paid for surgery on his leg, the cleaning of his teeth, and a general tune-up. The vet warned us that he had no idea how long the dog would last. His puppy days were years behind him, and age clearly not on the dog's side. Right then and there, I named him Fella. We had doubts whether he would come through the surgery, and I felt strongly he should have a name rather than a chart mark stray. Somehow I felt Fella honored his obviously complicated past. Through his travels, many strangers must have talked to the old fella on the road. It felt right. Clearly, Fella had been badly abused and had endured some very dark days. While I had planned to find him a home, it soon became clear he would have to stay with us. Probably no one else would ever want him. Too old, too sick, too crippled, completely unknown history, Fella would be considered a bad risk. My husband, none too pleased, lamented that he would most likely be a runner and lure our other two dogs to jump the fence, or he'd fight or make a nuisance of himself and cause problems. Yet, there seemed to be a little choice, so he stayed. Fella never had any doubts about his new home. With his obvious joy at having a safe, warm place and food on a regular basis, he determined to be the best behaved dog on the planet. We let him in the house, and he lay quietly at my feet. While he slept, I stroked his back, determined to replace all the bad touch with loving contact. Soon he began to relax, and in a short time, he slept so soundly. Finally feeling secure enough to let down his guard that you had to shake him to rouse him. As for my husband's concerns, each one proved unfounded. With Fella's back legs so crippled and weak, he couldn't jump or dig. And besides, why would he want to leave? While he couldn't leap and celebrate mealtime like our other two dogs, he created his own form of excitement. Fella devised a way to sit on the deck and push with his front feet so he literally spun in circles. He had a goofy beardy grin and spun and wagged his head back and forth. He was quite a sight. If someone walked by outside a fence, Fella ran as best he could and barked a proud warning to mark his territory. Never before have I seen an animal so grateful to be loved. Oh. While he was with us, he had several serious brushes with death. Each time, the vet reminded us of his frail health and warned us that this could be too much for him. Yet, through it all, Fella defied the odds so he could go home to spend more time with the family he loved. We all knew we had a very special dog, Every challenge that came his way, he met and overcame. But after 2.5 years with us, Fela contracted an infection that destroyed his intestinal tract. Despite all the vet did to try and save him, it became clear his distress was too much to allow any longer. Letting him go would be the kindest and most loving thing we could do. Our family huddled tightly around Fela, touching him and whispering to him as he received the final injection. At the last moment, I intentionally looked into Fela's eyes, determined that he know I would always be there for him. Fela's been gone for over a year. We still miss him every day. And I know he came to us for a reason. Na makahilak naman punta ani. My husband says that Bearded Collie taught him more about accepting life's challenges and having dignity while aging than any human ever could. I agree. I smile when I remember his celebration of the things he could do and how he easily ignored the things he could not do. Life was something to be fought for, and he fought all the odds to live it. When I remember his walking, stiff-legged and in obvious pain, I marvel and am grateful that I got to witness his great strength and determination. When I feel the aches and pains in my bones these days, I remember Fela, and I smile and keep moving. I recently faced a cancer scare and wondered what decisions I would have made if the diagnosis had been positive. I thought of Fela's courage and knew I would fight to live no matter what. I think of Fela now running free and jumping with joy in the lush green fields of his new world. We are proud to have shared our life with him. Run fast, jump high, and bark loudly, old friend. We thought we rescued you, and now we know the truth. You rescued us. Lynn Swartzlander. Oh, makahilak na jugog sa mata. Di na ako mabasa, oy. Di na ako mabasa world kay makago. Ay, ay, ay. Asa ka ron nag-work akong bana, no? Nakusog man kayong uwan. Ay, ay, ay. Ngita ko Lion World. Bahala ko na tingog. Always the ocean. Alan entered my life like an ocean wave meets the sand, the force of it inevitable and powerful. I stood in front of my apartment building, watching my son and his new friend Julian clattering up and down the sidewalk on their big wheels. And then I saw a pair of dazzling white tennis shorts. "How's Julian behaving?" asked his father. We turned to watch our sons, then turned back to each other and resumed a conversation that flowed effortlessly. I found out this handsome single man liked poetry, philosophy, and kids. A very good combination, I decided. That first night when we got together at his place, he offered me coffee. I hesitated, not just over his offer, but over what I was possibly getting myself into. "With sugar?" he added quickly. An inveterate tea drinker, something compelled me to give his coffee a try. He was a good host, and the coffee was mellow to the taste. This is the night I start liking coffee, I thought. A little bit of sugar goes a long way. Now I'm in trouble, I realized, but kept sipping my coffee. I felt as if some kind of ocean wave was pulling me farther out to sea with this man, and I couldn't move away from the comfortable table and the guy in the great looking tennis shorts. On our first official date, dinner at his place, he seemed to sense I was not totally ready for a formal relationship. That's why I think he wore those same eye catching white tennis shorts and added a white sweatband around his head. Who are you? I asked at the door, amused by his sporty look. Jorn Borg, he replied with a grin that smashed through all my apprehensions. I stepped through the door laughing so hard that my tension went the way of all hard hit tennis balls that meet their demise in a place called the Sweet Spot. Now relaxed despite myself, I sat down to a delicious dinner he'd made. Cornish game hens and fried rice complete with peanuts. I thought to myself again, you are definitely in trouble. During the first week, we talked incessantly on the phone every day but one. On Wednesday, I decided to play it cool. Can't be so easy to get, I thought. Yet by Thursday, he called again. In 7 short days, I took an intense roller coaster ride from wild interest to, no, I think we need to be friends, to knowing by the end of the week that love had found me. What should I do about it? I asked myself. After an unfortunate violent first marriage, I had stubbornly resisted the reawakening of my heart until now. Our next trip was to the beach. The ocean had always been a special place for me, a symbol of turning points, of truth, of changes if they're meant to come. I watched him a lot that day. He fished, and I took photos of the beach, the waves, and him. The ocean always found my honesty. I drank in the fresh salt air. I breathed again that day, and ever so gently, wave upon wave, my heart relaxed into his. We would have many more trips to the ocean, many more cups of fine warm coffee. Much sugar added to our lives. He would help me raise 2 fine sons, move past fear, build a business together, nurse me through a sudden illness, write poetry. But thinking about it now, I do believe the ocean married us that day, in a ceremony natural and powerful. 2 souls like 2 waves moving together, open to their destiny, colliding so magnificently into one. Big, crashing, jubilant waves, celebrating, holding happiness in their white water crests. We still go to the beach often, but even when we're in the city, I look out the window and say, always the ocean for us. I lift my coffee cup as if in salute, for in my heart I can still hear the roar of our powerful place, the ocean. By Sheila Stevens. It's beautiful. Kusog ang uwan. Saon na lang ni. The Circle of Love. The scream pierced the air. "Mom, call 911. Dad's had a heart attack." The gusty March winds had scattered leaves from a huge oak tree blanketing the front yard. Our son said he wanted to clean them up before he left to return to his home north of San Antonio. "Wait about 30 minutes and let your food digest," my husband said. We just finished a delicious grilled steak dinner, joyfully prepared by my husband. The three of us had no idea it would be our last meal together. "Dad, if I sit down, I won't get up." My son walked out the door to the garage and attached the grass and leaf catcher onto the lawn mower. My husband followed. He removed a leaf rake from a wall rack and walked to the side of the house where he began raking leaves that had piled against the air conditioning unit. The lawnmower was noisy, yet our son distinctly heard someone call him. "Who?" Glancing up, he saw his father's crumpling to the lawn. He began CPR immediately. After the paramedics arrived, they rushed my husband to a hospital less than 10 minutes from our home. My son and I were seated in a private waiting room. The cardiologist put his arm around us both. I'm sorry, he died instantly. He had lived 9 years since his first attack. 9 years filled with lots of blessings, special trips by car to 13 of the western states, always with oxygen tanks in tow, wonderful family gatherings, the enjoyment of our beautiful grandchildren. He also got to see all 5 of his sons graduate from college, his proudest moments of parenthood. A tall man dressed in familiar green hospital scrubs came in holding a clear Ziploc bag. "I'm so sorry. Here are your husband's belongings, his watch and wedding band." "Wedding band? Are you sure?" I said, taking the bag from him. "Ma'am, it was on his ring finger of his left hand." I opened the bag and removed the wedding band. "I can't believe this. He stopped wearing his ring years ago because it was too big and kept sliding off. He was afraid of losing it." I looked at our initials etched inside. Pick-Pack, Pick-Hack, 5445, love forever. "Can I get you anything? A cup of coffee?" the nurse asked. "No, but thanks for your concern." I gently closed my hand around the gold band. Questions crowded my thoughts. He had lost so much weight with his heart disease. The ring was at least 3 sizes too large. When did he put the ring on? How did the ring remain on his finger during the heroic efforts carried out by our son, neighbors, and paramedics, his being lifted onto a gurney and transported to a hospital? When I think of the possibilities of it being lost in the lawn or even lying unnoticed on the floor of the ambulance or emergency room, I thank God for his way of getting the ring back to me. Kay lakon man sa tani. Now, when I look at the band, the quick flash of his smile and his twinkling green eyes dance across my mind like a breeze across the water. Our love lives on through a lifetime of vivid memories that will never fade. And though his gold band, now worn on a delicate chain close to my heart, creating an even larger circle of love. Polly Camp Creates. Oh, makahilak man sa daan niyo eh. Waihilakay. Message received. I knew the answer before he even asked. My boyfriend of 2 years dropped down on one knee, pulled out a velvet heart-shaped box, and asked, "Will you marry me?" Louis looked so adorable. Such a large, strong man suddenly turned so vulnerable. I couldn't have found a better mate, so gorgeous, caring, and easygoing. He had become my best friend, and I knew in my heart that I loved him. "Yes," I answered. A wave of relief washed over his face, then a huge, boyish smile that preceded a passionate kiss. "Thank you for making me the happiest man in the world." That week, we set the date for August of the following year, and I start to pick out cards for our engagement announcement, and the memories immediately flooded back. This wasn't the first time I had planned a wedding. 5 years ago, Juno, my first fiancé, had died unexpectedly only 6 months prior to our wedding date. Pain paralyzed my heart as unfinished grief and longing reared up. I realized that planning another wedding brought all my feelings to the surface. I wondered if I'd ever heal from that loss. I thought I had gotten over him since I was so young, only 23 years old when Juno died. Family and friends expected I would move on and date others, which I had. But marriage? As the months passed, I began to ponder whether Juno, the angel, felt anger toward me for wanting to marry someone else. After all, I had once promised to be his one and only. The next morning, I found myself praying Juno would get my message. "Dear God, tell Juno that I know I said I would be his wife, but since you needed him, I've fallen in love with a beautiful man who treats me well. I'm very happy, yet afraid that Juno might be mad that I'm going to have to break my word. Please have him forgive me. Tell him I'm sorry and that I hope that he will send me a sign so I know that he approves." Just then, a knock on the door startled me. I jumped, almost expecting Juno to be there. Louise came in. "Are you ready for?" I wondered. "We've got premarital counseling today. Remember, the pastor changed it to this morning?" "Oh, that's right." Quickly, I got ready, and we decided to take my car since it was faster than his. "Are you okay?" Louise asked as he started the engine. I nodded. "You still want to marry me, don't you?" I turned to him, knowing I couldn't let this man out of my life. If only Louis knew how much I really did love him. In that moment, I knew without a doubt that I was willing and ready to break a solemn vow I'd once made to someone else, to move forward and marry Louis. "Yes," I replied. Louis stopped the car in the church parking lot, got out, and came around to my side and let me out. "Did you see my wallet anywhere?" He suddenly began patting his pockets. "Maybe it's underneath the seat." Louis went back to the driver's side as I walked around the car to help him search. He found his wallet under the seat, but something else caught his eye. He reached farther back and pulled out a shiny gold object. "What's this?" My hands flew to my face. I had lost that X's and O's gold bracelet since years ago. It was my birthday present from Juno, the last day he told me how much he loved me. I had searched my car many times looking for this special bracelet, and had given up hope of ever finding it. Wow, this is beautiful, Louise said, impressed. With some hesitation, I explained who had given me the bracelet so many years ago. For a moment, Louis just stared at the piece of shimmering in the sun. Then he took my hand and tenderly fastened Jonah's bracelet on my wrist. You don't mind me wearing it? No, he replied. Now you can think of it as a present from both of us. Ay, makahilak man tani, di nako. Hi world, mag-vacuum sa ako world kay murag hugaw ang salog. Enjoy your day. Aloha.